We begin our series with an aerial shot of Korea showing both sides of the country as we follow an eagle, eventually leading us to Seoul. Famous fashion CEO Yoon Se-ri is photographed with a man while her PR team discuss the implications of it. As she leaves the building, she gets a call from her older brother, Yoon Se-hyuk, who reveals that their father has just been released from prison. We then cut to Chairman Yoon, with his two sons and their wives having dinner together. While both brothers argue over who deserves to inherit the company more, their father demands to know where Se-ri is. It's here that she arrives to greet her father but tells her she is not staying. Before she leaves, he tells her that she's the one he wants to take over the company as he has been watching her over the last 10 years. She accepts the offer, much to the annoyance of her brothers, and mentions she'll be making some changes when it comes to the different CEOs. The next day, Se-ri decides to go paragliding given it's one of her passions. After being in the air for a while, a tornado suddenly forms, causing Se-ri to spin out of control. We then cut to soldiers, led by Captain Ri Jeong-hyeok, driving from the northern side of demilitarized zone to go patrolling. They come face to face with soldiers from the south as they have caught grave robbers. Just as both sides are about to come to blows, they each get the order to stand down. Back at the border, Jeong-hyeok reports to his superior about his findings and believes the captives should be punished. However, the leader replies that they had permission from the State Security Department and therefore should be lenient. The next day, the heiress wakes up hanging from a tree and starts calling for help when she realizes how high she is. This gets the attention of Jeong-hyeok, who quickly finds her. Seeing his gun and medals, she unbuckles herself and crash lands on him. As fate would have it, she thinks he's the one who has trespassed, but he's quick to tell her the truth. She's actually in North Korea and she has to be taken in for investigation. She refuses, believing she can run back through the border. Unfortunately, Captain Ri steps on a mine and, unable to move, has no choice but to let her go. While another soldier helps him free, Captain Ri tells him to alert the troops about a South Korean woman who has accidentally crossed the border. The 6th Company quickly find her and start chasing, but they stop in their tracks when they see her running through a minefield. After managing to get out of it unscathed, she desperately runs past miles of barbed wire trying to find an exit to South Korea. Back in Seoul, Se-ri's family find out that Se-ri is missing, which pleases her brothers and their wives. We then flash back to the day of the dinner where Se-ri's mother asked her to leave and not to accept her father's offer. Back in the present, Yoon Se-hyung's wife tells him not to miss the recent opportunity as he still needs to find Gu Sung-jun, who has run away with his money. In China, Gu Sung-jun talks with Mr. Oh about hiding from Se-hyung and wonders if he'll find him easily. Mr. Oh then suggests a different place while Captain Ri's superior speaks with the 3 robbers as we see he was their accomplice. The 3 men are then taken away in a truck, suddenly pushed off the road, down a ravine and exploding as they hit the bottom. After walking for miles, Se-ri sees a village and feels relieved as she thinks she's back home. However, as she watches their way of life and strict morning routine, she soon realizes she's wrong. Just as the leader drives in, Captain Ri arrives in time to take her somewhere safe. In a flashback of Se-ri over the years and how she became successful before returning to the present in North Korea, where Se-ri starts flirting, thinking she can get her way with Captain Ri. Unbeknownst to her, he's actually wondering if he should kill her. The next day at breakfast, Se-ri realizes just how difficult her situation is when she sees how North Koreans live. She tells Jeong-hyeok people will be looking for her as she's very famous, while we see her family doubling their efforts to find her, but also making sure news of her disappearance doesn't reach the media. Pyo arrives at his captain's house and is shocked to see Se-ri there. They both start arguing about the situation before the rest of the company arrives. Captain Ri gives her some orders to follow, including staying in the house and not speaking to anyone. After clashing some more with the other soldiers and each of them poking fun at the other's culture, she agrees to the terms and they decide to help her go back to South Korea by sea. On the shoreline, the women of the village prepare cabbages and discuss Jeong-hyeok returning from the outpost, while Se-ri finds out more of their food customs and how much more advanced South Korea is. Before leaving, Captain Ri tells her to use the phone if she needs anything urgently. However, she doesn't listen and keeps calling him with silly requests. After Ri leaves their office, The two men discuss hiring Sung-young as he was responsible for a $1 billion scheme. We then cut to China where Sung-young discusses his future protection by relocating to a remote and expensive house in North Korea. Meanwhile, Se-ri feels overwhelmed as the electricity turns off in the evening. Hearing noises, she starts panicking and picks up a vase ready to hit the intruder. However, it turns out to be Jeong-hyeok bringing her a candle, which prompts her to start crying as she requested a scented one. In South Korea, both sisters-in-law discuss the latest news around Se-ri's disappearance and think that their father-in-law wasn't serious when he requested Se-ri take over the business. Back in the north, Se-ri laments her situation to Captain Ri. He tells her he will be leaving for the capital the next day but that the rest of the company will help her leave on a boat in a couple of days. Going back inside the house, she looks at the bag of things he got for her and it turns out he bought a lot of toiletry and cosmetic products for her from South Korea, which makes her very happy. As Jeong-hyeok arrives in the capital, he is soon stopped by soldiers from the investigation division who take him to a torture room to be questioned about the death of the 3 grave robbers. Suddenly, a general arrives and kicks the man who was interrogating Jeong-hyeok, screaming and asking him if he knows who he is as he's the director's son for the General Political Bureau. He then later calls Lieutenant Joe and berates him for not know who Captain Ri is. Later that night, Jeong-hyeok speaks to General Myung-suk about the accident. He wants to find the truck that caused the accident as it's the same kind which has caused other fatal crashes. After the conversation, Jeong-hyeok receives a call from Pyo who reveals that Lieutenant Joe is about to do house inspections. This prompts him to borrow a car and speed through the street to reach the village. We then cut to Wool-suk and 2 other women performing inspections in the different houses. Just as Lieutenant Joe arrives and decides to look at Captain Ri's house as they see lights inside. They quickly find Se-ri hiding inside the kimchi cellar. Colonel Joe escorts her outside and points his gun, just as Jeong-hyeok arrives and asks what he's doing. We then cut to an epilogue where we see Se-ri visiting a euthanasia clinic in Switzerland where she requests to die due to all the pain she has been experiencing from mental illness. The woman in charge asks her to go and have a look at the scenery first. She complies, and as she watches all the paragliders with the beautiful mountains in the backdrop, we see that Jeong-hyeok was also there and that they have indeed been in the same place before. We see Captain Ri arriving to stop Lieutenant Joe and claiming that Se-ri is his fiancée. He then requests to see her resident card, but Captain Ri advises she comes from South Korea and belongs to Division 11. This means she's unable to disclose anything about her reason for being there as anything to do with Division 11 is confidential. The soldiers believe them, and as they head back inside the house, Captain Ri explains that Division 11 are a group of spies living in South Korea. They're interrupted by a group of ladies from the village, desperate to get his attention and who try to question Se-ri about what she did there. However, she plays her role well and manages to get rid of them. After deciding what Ri will say to everyone once she leaves, Se-ri asks him if he plays the piano as she saw some music sheets on the shelves. We then flash back to see that he used to play while we cut to Pyongyang Airport where a lady, Seo-dan, arrives and bumps into Sung-hyun, also making his way to North Korea. In the coal mines, Joe meets with wiretapper Manbok and asks him to wire Jeong-hyeok's house, going on to tell him he's planning to use the woman living with him to destroy his family. We then see a flashback of Jeong-hyeok's brother as Manbok listens to him before telling a mysterious person when his brother will reach his destination, causing him to be killed by a truck. Back in the village, both Se-ri and Jeong-hyeok carry on their pretense with Se-ri telling him how to act around her. After he leaves, the women of the village come to ask her to join them in the kimchi battle, but she refuses. Jeong-hyeok calls the 4 soldiers into his office and explains what he had to do with Se-ri by calling her his fiancée. While they are all shocked by the revelation, Joo-myeok compares the situation to a Korean drama and believes they will end up falling in love as the main leads always do. They then talk about their plans to help her leave with the boat. The 4 soldiers return to the village while we see Manbok listening to them after having wires installed. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok decides to visit the scene of the accident and investigate the trucks. The soldier guarding the place explains that he didn't see who drove them but that they had unusual metal armor attached to the front. We then cut to Sung-hyun meeting with Lieutenant Joe who has a contract to protect him while we see Se-hyong still trying to find Sung-hyun. After listening to his wife, he decides to send people to China to look for him before meeting with his dad and brother. Both brothers try to use their sister's disappearance to be chosen as the new heir, and Sang-ae suggests using Se-ri's company to make up for the lost funds at their company. In the village, Se-ri sees firsthand how hard life is for some North Koreans as a young boy tries stealing some food in the house. Pyo tries to stop him, but Se-ri feels sorry for him as we hear his sister hasn't eaten in 3 days and gives him food to take to her. We then see the boy happily run to his sister with the food, finally able to feed her. Back in the village, Se-ri spends a fun last moment with the soldiers as she hands out some awards to them with prizes to claim once both countries reunite. She then takes Jeong-hyeok outside to show him the tomato plant she got for him. However, he is not impressed as he doesn't have time to look after the plant. After we see all 4 soldiers discussing Se-ri's departure, Jeong-hyeok drives her to the boat where she tells him that this will probably the last time they see each other. When they arrive at their destination, Jeong-hyeok decides at the last minute to accompany her on the boat. While sailing away, they finally reveal their names to each other before the Coast Guard approaches on a different boat. They quickly hide in the hull, but the guards demand they open it. As they do, Jeong-hyeok kisses Se-ri, while we see a flashback of Man-bok listening to Jeong-hyeok talking to his new plant. We return where we left off with the guards surprising Jeong-hyeok and Se-ri kissing. He tells them to come out, and after pretending to be a young couple in love, the guards let them go but order them to go back ashore. Se-ri protests as they were so close and asks Jeong-hyeok to try again soon. However, he tells her it's impossible as the Coast Guard will now be on alert. After finding a goodbye note from Se-ri, Jeong-hyeok rushes to look for her and finds her on a cliff about to jump off with her paraglider. He tells her she will be shot if she tries and will not be able to reach South Korea. Unfortunately, because she tried using her walkie-talkie, the North Korean army is alerted and quickly make their way to check the origin of the signal. Realizing they aren't far from there, Jeong-hyeok pulls her towards the cliff and they both jump, holding on to each other tightly. At the market, Man-bok buys some pork while Jeong-hyeok looks for coffee. Suddenly, there's a small explosion and a thief steals Man-bok's wallet. Jeong-hyeok runs after him and comes face to face with a gang. A fight ensues between them, and just as Jeong is about to be stabbed in the back, Man-bok arrives to save him. In the garden, Se-ri has an idea and thinks that if Jeong-hyeok gets promoted, she will stand a better chance at getting out. However, Se-ri finds out that his wife is Young Ae, so she decides to head to her birthday celebration. Once there, she does her best to impress Young Ae, using her fashion skills and knowledge to win the women over. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok visits the repair unit facility where he manages to steal a sample of the metal used on the trucks. He returns home to find Se-ri at Young Ae's house, and after a bike ride, they have some fun together with the other 4 soldiers while eating and drinking. Back in Seoul, Jung Pyong announces that Se-hyung will take over the company, which angers his brother and results in another argument between the two. Se-jun tells his dad that Se-hyun wanted to go to the tabloids about Se-ri being his illegitimate daughter. Back in North Korea, after a heavy night, Jeong-hyeok roasts some coffee beans to brew for Se-ri. As she tastes it, she thanks him and tells him how delicious the coffee is while doing a heart sign with her fingers. Later in the day, Jeong-hyeok relays the gesture to Pyo and Ju-myuk. The latter tells him it means that she likes him and wants to give him her heart. In Pyongyang, Seodan, her mother and uncle visit a department store to get a new outfit for Seodan. After discussing her daughter's time in Russia, Myung-eun meets with a friend, and after she comments about her daughter, Myung replies that Seodan will be married to Jeong-hyeok within the year. Back in the village, Se-rin and the women shop for beauty products. One of the sellers shows them products from South Korea, and some of them turn out to be from Se-ri's range, which surprises her. Using her knowledge, she convinces Young Ae to buy some for everyone. Meanwhile, Mr. Hong and Park Soo-chan carry on discussing the disappearance of Se-ri before coming face to face with Se-hyung and Sang-ae. Both men tell them that she could have flown to the north and wonders if they should start searching there. However, Se-hyung and his wife quickly dismiss them and warns them not to start spreading rumors. In North Korea, Seodan makes her way to Jeong-hyeok's village in a taxi, but unfortunately it breaks down before reaching her destination. As she waits for the driver to come back, Sung-young, who is returning from hunting, drives past and decides to stop to help her. Lieutenant Jo finds out that no women from Division 11 have returned to North Korea in the last 15 years. While back in the village, the women tell Jeong-hyeok that they have lost Se-ri in the market. He rushes over and, noticing the darkness, takes a scented candle and lights it up, holding it over his head. A lost Se-ri sees it and walks towards him, relieved and happy. In the epilogue, we see Se-ri in Switzerland on a suspension bridge recording a message for her family as she prepares to jump. Jeong-hyeok is also there taking pictures, and as he looks at her, Seo-dan appears, asking to get a picture of them. Jeong-hyeok asks Se-ri to take it, subsequently making her walk off the bridge. We see Captain Ri finding Se-ri with a candle while Seo-dan finds her fiancé's house empty. After dropping her off, Sung-joon seems to recognize Se-ri while driving home. Se-ri, however, tells Jeong-hyeok how flustered he made her with the candle. This prompts him to tell her not to get any ideas as he's already engaged. While they talk, they wind up face to face with Seo-dan, who has been waiting by the house. Shocked to see her, he asks how long she's been back, and they agree to have dinner with each other's parents. As Seo-dan notices Se-ri, Jeong-hyeok explains that she's his colleague working with him on a mission. Soon after, Jeong-hyeok drops Seo-dan home, but her uncle appears out of the house and asks him to come up and meet Seo's mom. Unable to refuse, Jeong follows him to the house, where the mother is waiting dressed up and with dinner ready. Meanwhile, Sung-young thinks about his encounter and wonders if it was really Se-ri, as we see a flashback of them going on a date. At the same time, the women of the village knock on Se-ri's door as they have seen what's just happened. Feeling sorry for her, they invite themselves in and bring beer and snacks. Around drinks, they discuss Jeong-hyeok, but Se-ri quickly defends him, saying his engagement has been arranged by their parents, and compares herself and Jeong to Romeo and Juliet. This impresses young Ae, who vows to help her by putting in some good words about the captain to her husband. After leaving Seo-dan, Jeong-hyeok heads to his father's house to ask him for a favor before returning home to an angry Se-ri. He explains that he's going to make her a member of the national track team who take part in international competitions. That way she'll be able to fly to Europe. Unfortunately, Manbok is listening to the whole conversation and relays it to Cho, who also mentions Captain Ri's brother's watch and wonders where it is. During the morning assembly, Jeong-hyeok notices that the 4 soldiers are missing, which prompts him to rush over, where he finds them being interrogated by Cho. He confronts him before Cho receives a call from the colonel, who's furious as he has just found out the accident, and himself are still being investigated. After returning from the market, Se-ri helps Manbok's son, who's being bullied, before we cut to South Korea, where Mr. Hong and Suchon have found someone who has picked up Se-ri's transmission when she used the walkie-talkie. Haiji tries to rally her mother-in-law to her side, while we see Se-hyong in China, trying to find Sung-young by torturing a man for his whereabouts. During dinner, Se-ri thanks the soldiers for what they've done and ends up doing the heart sign with her fingers to each of them, which seems to make Jeong-hyeok jealous. During the night, Manbok remembers how Chung Ryol helped him when soldiers were beating him up. He then silently cries himself to sleep, feeling guilty about his death. On their way to the capital, the train is stopped due to technical issues, where the announcer claims that it will take at least 10 hours before the train departs again. After being hounded by multiple merchants, night falls and they head outside as everyone builds fires to keep warm. After eating some food they bought from the merchants, they talk about the difficulties they had to face, and Se-ri tells him to look at the future. When she falls asleep, Jeong gently puts her head on his shoulder in a really touching moment. The next day, the train finally arrives in Pyongyang with Sung also on board. As he reaches his hotel, one of the porters calls someone and tells them he's not sure Sung can be trusted. Having heard everything, Sung-young points a gun at the porter and takes his phone from him. He then hears Se-hyong on the other end of the phone, who tells him that once he finds him and gets his money back, he'll kill him. Suddenly Sung-jung sees Se-ri and asks Se-hyong how his sister is. After replying that she's dead, Sung-jung hangs up the phone and comes face to face with Se-ri. This prompts him to take her away in the lift, shortly followed by Jeong-hyeok, who's shocked to see them together. We begin where we left off with Sung-young recognizing Se-ri and taking her aside. Jeong-hyeok follows and quickly separates them, demanding to know who he is. Se-ri replies that he's an acquaintance and also explains to Sung that Jeong-hyeok is her bodyguard. However, Sung-young has to quickly leave as he's still being chased. Later on, Se-ri explains that Sung-young was a man that her family tried to marry her off to. Her brothers chose him because he works overseas and wanted to get rid of her. As they talk, a friend of Seo-dan sees them and calls the latter, warning her about what she's seeing. We then cut back to Sung-young being threatened while speaking on the phone to Se-hyung, who's after his money. However, he reveals that his sister is still alive and tries to make a deal, which is to offer him back half the money in exchange for the location of Se-ri. After checking Se-ri's room for bugs, Jeong-hyeok heads out to see Seo-dan waiting behind the door. Se-ri also comes out, and when she sees how annoyed Seo-dan is, she decides to leave them alone. Seo confronts him and tells him that they're having dinner with both their parents that same evening. On the rooftop, Seo-dan and Sung-joon meet properly as they talk about the man who has upset her. Later, he meets with Se-ri and lies about his reasons for being in North Korea. She then asks him, when he goes back to Seoul, to tell his dad to go ahead with their agreement. Unbeknownst to her, Sung-young had her on speakerphone for her brother to hear. During the dinner, Jeong-hyeok's father suggests having the wedding the next month, which surprises and pleases Seo-dan's mother. Jeong-hyeok also agrees to it, as it has been an arrangement planned for quite some time. Heading to the bathroom, Seo-dan comes face to face with Se-ri and tells her that she's getting married next month. Se-ri and Jeong-hyeok finish the evening together and head to eat in a restaurant. After a short blackout, snow starts to fall outside, prompting Se-ri to explain that if a couple watches the first snow of the year together, their love will be fulfilled. However, she jokes, saying it would be a mess if they were together. In Seoul, Se-hyung and his wife speak to Mr. Oh about Se-ri being in North Korea. Mr. Oh panics and promises to get her back home safely, but is surprised when Sang-ah offers him money to make sure she stays there forever. Meanwhile, Cho is interrogated by Director Hwang as his phone records show that he has been calling the engineering brigade multiple times. However, Cho holds many of the higher-ups in his pocket, as they unknowingly took bribes from him in the past. He later meets with Sung-young, who shows him a picture of Se-ri and asks him to make sure she doesn't leave the country. He relays all this to Man-bok and tells him that, thanks to him, he knows exactly how and when she's planning to leave. The next day, Se-ri has dinner with Jeong-hyeok, and the four soldiers explain that she will be leaving soon. After more joking about the differences between both countries, Jeong gives the soldiers a day off to do a farewell picnic for Se-ri. During this time, the boys Fish and Pyo surprises them by reading a poem with some nice words for Se-ri. Later that night, as she prepares to leave and say goodbye to Jeong-hyeok, she tells him she'll miss him. In reply, he tells her that she should forget everything and everyone she saw in the village. We then cut to Man-bok, who's still tearfully listening, eventually ringing his boss to tell him they've left. The next day, Hwang drives her away when they're suddenly followed by one of the armored trucks. A chase between the two gets underway, and just as they're about to crash into them, a motorbike arrives and starts shooting at the truck. Se-ri's car gets stuck on the road, so the biker, who turns out to be Jeong-hyeok, sends his bike flying into the truck wheels and manages to stop him by shooting at it. Unfortunately, one of the drivers shoots Jeong-hyeok in the back and Hwang in the leg during the ensuing chaos. During the epilogue, we see a flashback of Jeong getting his bike and weapons ready to protect Se-ri on her journey to the airport. We see Jeong-hyeok and Gwang-beom getting shot while trying to save Se-ri. Gwang-beom wants to drive her to the airport, but Se-ri refuses and decides to take the keys to drive to the hospital as she fears for Jeong's life. They finally arrive, and when the doctors look at Jeong, they see that he is losing a lot of blood and needs a transfusion. Unfortunately, they don't have a blood bank, so Se-ri offers to give him hers despite Gwang telling her she will not make her plane. After waiting a while, Se-ri finds out that the surgery was successful, so she stays by his bedside, realizing he has become special to her, while we see Cho wondering what happened during the accident and where Captain Ri is. We then see a flashback of Jeong-hyeok playing piano at a concert just before receiving the news of his brother's death. While preparing to leave, He plays his piano one last time for a little girl by the harbor. As we cut back to the present, he wakes up and gets upset when he sees Se-ri there because they have all risked their lives in order for her to leave. Thinking it is the anesthetics talking, she leaves him alone. After Jeong-hyeok finds out that Se-ri saved him by giving him blood, he goes after her to apologize. She tells him that she wants to go home but this time wants to protect him too, which prompts him to finally kiss her. The next day in hospital, Se-ri and Jeong-hyeok speak about the night before and what to do about it while she sews a hole in his uniform. She suggests ignoring it ever happened or to just be cool about it. After they both decide to go for the second option, she leaves his room and finds the rest of the soldiers in the hallway. They tell her they're glad they're both okay as they were all worried. Even Pyo, which he denies of course. Back in the village, Seo-dan heads to see her fiancé, but just as she realizes that he isn't home, she comes face to face with Sung-young, who invites her to wait in his car. They later have noodles together where he gives her relationship advice before we cut back to the hospital where Se-ri decides to sleep there again. After calling all the hospitals around the area, Cho finally finds out where Jeong-hyeok is. Arriving in his room, Cho confronts him about the weapons he took. Jeong-hyeok then admits to shooting another soldier as he was trying to cause an accident. Just as Cho is about to arrest him for his involvement with Se-ri, Jeong-hyeok's father arrives and stops him. He berates him for his actions before Seo-dan and her mother arrive, having just found out about his injury. Se-ri calls Sung-young to ask if he has spoken to her family. He then decides to pick her up while Seo-dan confronts Jeong-hyeok about Se-ri. He finally admits his feelings for her and reveals that he doesn't think he can marry her. However, she tells him that Se-ri is leaving soon and that the date is set. Sung-young takes Se-ri to his mansion where he lies about speaking to her family. He tells he that they were relieved to hear she was okay and wanted to make sure she doesn't do anything reckless to get back to South Korea. In South Korea, however, Se-ri's family gather for the shareholders' meeting. Her father addresses the assembly and reveals that his daughter has been missing for a month now, so they have decided to register her as dead. The shareholders vote for the new CEO and the winner is Se-hyung, who will be the one taking over the company. Back in the north, Seo-dan and her mum decide to go and choose a wedding dress. In the shop, Seo-dan accidentally comes across a picture of Se-ri in one of the wedding magazines the shop owner has managed to get from the south. Worried about Se-ri, Jeong-hyeok manages to track her down to Sung-young's address. He decides to leave the hospital to find her but is stopped when he comes face to face with Seo-dan, who confronts him about the identity of Se-ri. He then reveals the truth about her while Sung-young asks Se-ri to stay with him and to leave Jeong-hyeok as she is putting him in danger. The epilogue shows us a flashback of Se-ri meeting with her date and deciding to play a tune on the piano she heard a while back to see if he could recognize it, as she hasn't been able to find out what it is. She tells him she heard it when she was in Switzerland a few years ago, as we see that she was on a boat hearing the music when Jeong-hyeok was playing the song he wrote for his brother. We see Jeong-hyeok talking to Seo-dan about Se-ri and telling her that he wants to make sure she gets back home safely. Sung-young tells Se-ri she should be careful and disappear because if something happens to her, all the people who helped her will get into trouble. Worried about her safety, Jeong-hyeok decides to take an ambulance to find Se-ri but comes to a dead end and returns to his hospital room. The next day, the 4 soldiers visit him in hospital, anxious for news. Sung-young rings Jeong-hyeok to tell him that she's with him and to stop looking for her, while the soldiers wonder why Se-ri didn't come to the phone. Pyo speculates about the man she's with, calling him her boyfriend. This angers Jeong as he raises his voice, insisting that he's not her boyfriend. However, his mood quickly changes for the better when he finds out that Se-ri called him ultimate favorite to the patient next door. Back in his villa, Se-ri asks Sung-young how he's planning to help her get back home. He tells her he'll use his other British identity and proposes a fake marriage to get her a different passport. During dinner, Sung-young proposes to Se-ri with a ring, as he wants to do things right, while we see Jeong-hyeok arriving at the villa after looking for its location all day. He turns the power off and starts beating up all the guards. Se-ri sees him through the window, and as she's about to open the door, Sung-young stops her and explains that if Jeong-hyeok manages to send her back home, his safety would not be guaranteed as Seo-dan wants to expose her. Se-ri steps out and berates Jeong-hyeok for arriving after getting shot. She tells him she's decided to stay with Sung-young and follow his plan to get married, telling him that he keeps failing at sending her back. She explains that they shouldn't see each other anymore. Jeong-hyeok decides to leave, but Se-ri quickly changes her mind and drives to find him and take him home. Unfortunately, the car is out of gas and they're forced to seek shelter in a nearby school. Meanwhile, Cho meets with the military director of the Central Committee to tell him that the son of the General Political Bureau director is protecting a woman from South Korea and wants them to be investigated. The director agrees but requests that he brings the woman to him. In the school, Jeong-hyeok asks Se-ri if she is really going to marry Sung-young. She tells him that it's only on paper, but she remains worried about what will happen to his life now that Seo-dan knows about her. The next day, Cho arrives with soldiers at the villa to look for Se-ri, while we see Seo-dan visiting Jong's father. Meanwhile, Se-ri and Jeong-hyeok manage to return to the village. Se-ri decides to stay a while to look after him while we see Manbok listening to them speak in his station. Cho calls him to ask if they're back, but Manbok lies and tells him they haven't. As we cut back to the village, the women are happy to see Se-ri and asks her if she's staying. After pawning off her engagement ring, she decides to buy them gifts to thank them for their kindness. At the pawn shop, she sees an expensive watch and decides to buy it, not realizing that it's the same watch Jeong-hyeok gave his brother many years ago. In South Korea, Chong-sik and Suchon remain determined to find their boss, which leads them to find her father and tell him his daughter is alive and in North Korea. Back in the village, Jeong-hyeok wakes up to a makeshift Christmas tree Se-ri made. After phoning him, she tells him she has left and didn't want to say goodbye again. As he rushes outside, she's nowhere to be seen. It turns out she's actually been taken away by two men who are holding her at gunpoint in a truck, forcing her to tell him to be happy and to forget their time together. He insists on finding out her whereabouts, but she says goodbye and tells him she loves him. Just as she hangs up, a gunshot bursts the silence. The epilogue shows us Seoul 1 year before on Christmas Eve as we see a much colder Se-ri making her employee work late. We then cut forward to how Se-ri was kidnapped in North Korea as she was about to give Jeong-hyeok the watch she found at that market. We pick up where we left off with Se-ri calling Jeong-hyeok and telling him she's leaving with Sung-joon. After telling him she loves him, we then see a struggle between her and her captors, resulting in a shot being fired into the roof of the truck. Unable to call her back, Jeong-hyeok returns home to find Cho and his soldiers ransacking his house. The lieutenant threatens to torture Se-ri to get information, which angers Jeong-hyeok, who then starts fighting with the soldiers. Unfortunately, there are too many of them and they manage to arrest him. In the detention center, Jeong-hyeok requests to see Seo-dan, to whom he asks if she's responsible for the disappearance of Se-ri and if she went to see his father. She tells him that Se-ri is dead and that he should forget about her. Before she leaves, he tells her to give a message to his father. If Se-ri gets hurt, he will lose the only son he has left. Jeong-hyeok asks the 4 soldiers to spread a rumor that he's the son of the director of the General Political Bureau, which they're of course surprised to learn. We later see that the rumor worked too, as the senior colonel manages to free him after being berated by his wife about it. In the village, Yoo-pil meets with his dad to reveal that Se-ri has been taken away, but also that she dropped something. He gives him the present, which he recognizes to be Suk-jin's watch. Meanwhile, Se-ri meets her kidnapper, which turns out to be Jeong-hyeok's dad, Chung Ryol. She thinks he's Seo-dan's father and starts explaining everything that has been happening to her, insisting that Jeong-hyeok had nothing to do with it. She begs him for some help to get back home, but he ignores her and sends her back upstairs. His wife, Kim Yoon-hui, later comes up to help and takes her to a warmer room, which is where she realizes whose house she's in. Jeong-hyeok rushes to his house and confronts his dad about Se-ri. He demands to know where she is, explaining that he couldn't breathe on his way over, thinking something might have happened to her. Se-ri wants to hide to protect him, but Yoon-hui decides to end her son's suffering and brings Se-ri over. They then have an emotional reunion, apologizing to each other, and as they all sit together, Jeong-hyeok admits that he hid her because he didn't want her to be hurt, which surprises everyone. Back in the house, Se-ri speaks to Jeong-hyeok about music and plays him the mysterious tune, asking if he knows what she heard playing in Switzerland many years ago. Shocked to hear his music, he gets up and starts playing it too. He then reveals that it was a song he wrote for his brother and that it was him who played that day by the lake. This is an emotional scene as we see both of them realize that they were in the same place, and Se-ri finally finds out who played that song on that fateful day. She reveals that she was in Switzerland because she was planning to die, and even there, he saved her life. He ends the conversation by promising to get her back home the next day. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Cho continues his plot to catch Jeong-hyeok as he relays to the general director that he could find what he wanted if he went to director of the General Political Bureau's house. Both men arrive in the house with a warrant to search the place. Fortunately, Cho and his men don't find anyone, and as Chung Ryol remains tight-lipped, the general director berates Cho and gets him arrested. We then find out that Jeong-hyeok has asked the senior colonel for an emergency switch for him and his company and to send them to the front line, which surprised them. However, they soon realize that this is a way to bring Se-ri back home. The next day, Jeong-hyeok and his men take Se-ri to the DMZ. They stop at an abandoned house where they share an emotional moment as they all talk about their mothers. Se-ri finds out that it will be a while before Eun-dong sees his mum again, as he still has 9 years before he can be discharged. She then tells them to make sure they stay healthy while hoping to meet them again if both countries ever reunite. In Seoul, Jong-yeon heads into Se-ri's apartment with both her daughter-in-laws, where she remembers an argument she had with Se-ri about the success of her business, blaming her for life being difficult. As they walk through the field, Jeong-hyeok tells Se-ri to live her life as if nothing has happened but to make sure she stays happy. We then see that he purposely keeps taking the wrong path to spend more time with her. Finally, though, he takes her to the border and tells her to walk by herself to a specific tree, which will signify she's arrived in South Korea. After telling him not to forget her, she starts walking, but he follows her by taking a step to the other side in order to kiss her goodbye. In the epilogue, we see Jeong-hyeok looking at his books and realizing that Se-ri has rearranged them to spell the words, "I love you, Ri Jeong-hyeok." In the next scene, we see Jeong-hyeok kissing Se-ri over the border. We then jump forward in time to Seoul in Se-ri's choice office, where we see some employees talking about the death of Se-ri. Suddenly, the latter arrives and reveals herself, much to the surprise of everyone. While some are pleased, others are not so much, especially her brothers and Sang-ah, who were just about to take over Se-ri's choice. In North Korea, the 4 soldiers return from their patrol, while we see Jeong-hyeok looking very sad and missing Se-ri. At night, Man-bok sneaks in to talk to him, where he explains that he met his brother many years back and helped him save his son, who was very ill. We then see a flashback of Cho blackmailing him to tap Moo-hyuk. This led to Cho listening to a conversation Moo-hyuk had with another soldier about all the crimes Cho has committed. He also shows that he was planning to hide a memory stick with the information inside his watch. This happens to be the same day Moo-hyuk died, as Man-bok was relaying his whereabouts to Cho. Cutting back to the present, Man-bok explains that he has never forgotten and gives him the watch and a recording. Jeong-hyeok listens to the recording and hears his brother talking about the song his younger sibling wrote for him. After saying that he liked it and hopes his brother is happy, we hear the car crash. Meanwhile, the women from the village find out the true identity of Se-ri courtesy of a letter she left behind thanking them. They're touched by her words as they now understand how difficult it must have been for her. In Seoul, Se-ri confronts her mother about what's been happening while she was gone. Her company shares went down and she found out the Sang-ah has bought a large amount of them. She then asks her if she was also planning to take over Se-ri's choice and wonders if she was hoping that she didn't come back. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok accesses the memory card his brother left in the watch and sends all the information about the corruption and incidents to his father. After their drunk escapades from the other day, Seo-dan and Sung-joon become closer when she saves him from being investigated for suspicious behavior. In another flashback, Sung-joon receives a call from Jong to discuss Se-ri's return to Seoul and asks him for a favor: to create a diversion and help him and Se-ri leave the village without being seen. In the present, Sung-joon tells Seo-dan that she needs to let go of her love for Jong as he loves another woman. In court, Cho is on trial for his multiple crimes, which includes murders and drug trafficking. He tries to deny all the charges, but Jeong-hyeok has some irrefutable evidence. The judge ignores his plea and gives his verdict: guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. Before leaving, he tries fighting everyone off and tells Jeong-hyeok that he will make sure Se-ri will die at any cost. Jeong-hyeok looks through the paperwork and realizes that there is more than one place which makes the armored truck. We then cut to Cho being taken away in an army vehicle and saved thanks to soldiers in one of the infamous trucks. The next morning, Jeong-hyeok receives a call from Cho, who threatens to go south and kill Se-ri. In Seoul, Se-ri leaves her office and is followed by none other than Cho. At home, she's unable to sleep and decides to go for a walk. As she wonders if Jeong-hyeok is pining for her, he appears right in front of her like a mirage. He approaches and tells her that he has been looking for her everywhere. In the epilogue, we see the 4 soldiers being taken into the same secret room as Manbok, where they're joined by Jeong-hyeok's father. He reveals that his son has gone south and asks them for a favor to bring him back. A few days later, they arrive in Seoul under the pretense of being part of the track team. After being amazed by the variety of food, they come across what seemed to be another North Korean, Dong-gu, who offers to help them blend in to South Korea. We see Se-ri coming face to face with Jeong-hyeok, thinking that she's dreaming. He promises her that she's not and quickly hugs her. We then cut back in time and see how he arrived in the south through long, narrow tunnels. However, he barely made it as part of it collapsed. After their emotional reunion, Se-ri is full of questions. Jeong tells her the reason he's there is because Cho has escaped prison and is after her. As soon as he catches him, he will then go back home. Se-ri seems a little disappointed, so she uses the opportunity to get him to stay with her at all times, especially given she's Cho's first target. We then see some funny scenes as Se-ri takes him back home and they discuss her eating habits. As he asks about her family, she lies and tells him they were happy to see her. Suddenly, Se-hyung and his wife decide to pay her a visit. After hiding Jeong-hyeok in her room, they reveal that they know she was in North Korea. Playing a phone recording from her time there, they threaten to go public with it, which would damage her company. However, she defends herself in the face of this reveal. After they leave, Jeong-hyeok comes out and hugs her, telling Se-ri to only keep the people she likes in her heart. While the 4 soldiers spend the evening in a spa, we see the women in the North Korean village dressed up and heading to see a fortune teller. She predicts that Manbok will have trouble getting back from his travels and that there will be a bloodbath in the village. We then see a number of higher-ups in the military being taken away and thrown in prison, while Cheon visits Sung-jun's room in a panic after finding out Cho has escaped. He urges him to leave, but as they both quickly pack and leave their room, Cheon is caught by the soldiers. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok's father finds a letter his son wrote to him explaining the situation and where he has gone. He burns the letter before relaying to his wife what he found out, prompting her to cry as she worries about her son's safety. Back in Seoul, Se-ri is feeling sad, knowing that her time with Jeong is going to be over soon. In order to help him blend in, they head to the shopping center to get him some new clothes. Despite his protests, she makes him try on multiple suits and insists on buying them for him. We then see his sweet side again as he holds the door for everyone as they head out. In Pyongyang, Dan meets with her 3 friends as they gossip about their own lives. They ask her if her marriage has been called off while Sung-young tries to figure out a way to hide. He then joins Dan as she leaves and shocks her friends when she gets in a car with him. Dan brings Sung-young back in her house where they eat instant noodles together, and Sung-young later wonders if Dan has feelings for him. In Seoul, Se-jun and his wife reveal to his mother that Se-ri was in North Korea when she disappeared. They tell her that Se-hyung knew and probably wanted Se-ri to stay there. In her office, Se-ri shows Jeong-hyeok an online video of him keeping the door open for strangers, and as they read the comments, we see Cho lurking in the hallway. Jeong-hyeok then receives a call that Cho has made an appointment with a broker, so he decides to head to their location in the evening. He tells Se-ri that if he catches him, he'll have to leave right away, so she puts her number and an app with her location in his phone just in case. Unfortunately, when he arrives, it turns out to be a trap, as he's quickly cornered by several men trying to kill him. A fight ensues between them, but Jeong-hyeok quickly disposes of them. Returning to her car, Se-ri sees Cho waiting in the back seat. She starts running off but drops her phone in the process. She manages to hide though while Jeong-hyeok desperately tries to reach her. Cho picks up the phone and lies that he has Se-ri. He rushes to the car park, but as he gets there, Se-ri quickly shouts that she's okay but Cho has a gun. The episode ends as Jeong-hyeok finds her and quickly puts his hands over her mouth. In the epilogue, we see Se-ri in Switzerland again and meeting Dan in a shop while looking at Kit Kats. She tells her that they're great to eat when feeling depressed. We then cut forward to the day she took a picture of Jeong-hyeok and Dan as she thinks to herself that he could do better. Recognizing her, Dan angrily bites into her Kit Kat and leaves. In the next scene, we see Se-ri trying to escape Cho. She creates a diversion by turning off the lights just as Jeong-hyeok arrives. This also causes security guards to arrive, which makes Cho run off for now. Se-ri decides to visit some gangsters and proposes a deal with them. She tells them that the first one to find out anything about Cho will be rewarded generously. She then decides to find Suchon and tells him that after everything he has done for her, she'll offer him a job with 3 times his current salary. As she heads back home, Se-ri sees that Jeong-hyeok has been playing an online MMO all day. Jeong is also unaware that he was playing against Eun-dong and got a little out of hand as she finds out that he has bought a lot of microtransactions. As she finds out that he had plans to meet and fight with his opponent, she punishes him by putting child settings on her computer. In North Korea, Sung-young calls Dan complaining about not having electricity and being ill. While eating porridge, Sung-young recalls his difficult childhood and reveals that Se-ri's family is the one responsible for conning his father. This is why he became close to their family and managed to get money out of Se-ri's brother. In the evening, Se-ri and Jeong-hyeok drink together. Jeong admits that he doesn't want to leave and wants to stay with her forever. She tells him he can stay but makes him promise to only drink with her as she doesn't want anyone else seeing him drunk. In North Korea, Myung-eun is shocked when she discovers that her daughter didn't sleep in her bed. She then asks her brother to find out everything he can about Sung-young. We then see the latter waking up next to Dan with an empty bottle of alcohol in her arms. In the North Korean village, the women worry about Ms. Ma who hasn't come out of her house since her husband has been arrested. Wool-suk tells them that the state security department is watching the family like a hawk and warns them against visiting her. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok gets dressed and Se-ri notices his watch. She tells him this was the one she bought for him, which prompts him to realize that she saved him too. They get ready to head to a ceremony celebrating her new home line, while we see the 4 soldiers discussing their plan to also attend the event. She gives a speech and thanks everyone for their hard work, giving them a special bonus. After dressing for the part, the 4 soldiers enter the department store determined to find Se-ri. After failing once again, they are chased out by the security, and as Eun-dong falls to the floor, Jeong-hyeok catches a glimpse of him running away without shoes. The 4 boys finally stop by a bench, and as Pyo offers to lend Eun-dong his trainers, they're all surprised to see their captain join them. They then have an emotional reunion, hugging each other. Se-jun and his wife come to the shop with flowers and lie to her about just finding out she was in North Korea and hearing that Se-hyung tried to stop her from coming back. She finds out that manager Oh managed to buy a flat outright, so she instructs her brother to find out how he got the money. After they leave, she receives a phone call from Jeong-hyeok and rushes over to him. Another emotional reunion happens between her and the boys. Even Pyo gives in and hugs her. She takes them to her house where the boys are in awe when they see all the luxuries. They sit around the table, cooking meat and joking around about food and Captain Ri being called a lover boy. Later on, Se-ri overhears Manbok telling Jeong-hyeok that his father has sent them to bring him back and that he has until the end of the games before they have to go. In North Korea, young Ae is touched when each of her friends brave the night to bring her food and supplies, while Jong-yeon confronts her husband as she thinks he knew Se-ri was in North Korea. He doesn't deny it though, so she reveals that Se-hyung knew too and stopped her from coming back. The next morning, Se-ri gets ready to leave for work and puts on a brave face as she meets with her mom. It's here we find out just how strained their relationship is as we see a flashback of a day in her childhood, where she abandoned Se-ri on a beach one evening. Se-hyung and his wife meet with Cho, who tells him they want the same thing, which is to get rid of Se-ri. Se-hyung doesn't agree with the deal as the man can't guarantee her safety. After he leaves her room, His wife stays behind and offers her help to carry out his plan. Se-ri returns home to an empty house and, thinking they have left her, collapses on the floor crying. However, they all appear with gifts as a surprise given it's her birthday. She storms out and carries on crying. Jong runs after her, but she tells him that from now, she will always sadly remember this day every birthday. Jeong-hyeok walks towards her and promises that all the years to come will be good as he'll be thinking of her and be grateful that she was born. In the epilogue, Jeong-hyeok plays the online game and then finds the recording Se-ri made the day she tried to jump off the bridge in Switzerland. He's then shocked when he overhears his voice asking to take a picture, realizing that it was fate. Later, we see Jeong-hyeok comforting Se-ri. She tells him that he needs to go back home and promises to be strong when he does. Meanwhile, the 4 soldiers worry about her crying. Returning inside, Se-ri tells them she was startled when they turned up. After singing her the North Korean birthday song, she tells them to make a wish after blowing out the candles. Later that evening, Jeong-hyeok comes to see her in her bedroom to give her a present, couple rings. She's touched by this gift and promises never to take it off. In North Korea, Myung-eun is surprised to find Sung-joon in her daughter's place. He reveals that she drank a whole bottle of vodka but tries to convince her not to be too harsh. After she scolds Dan, they all have some food together as Sung-young tries to charm Myung-eun, admitting to having a crush on Dan. Back in Seoul, Se-ri finds out from Manbok that Jeong-hyeok will have to return with them in a few days as the military sports games are almost over. She later sits with the 4 soldiers and, looking at what they're wearing, decides to give them her credit card and lets them buy anything they want. We then see them going through shops as they try different clothes and are amazed at the variety of items on offer. Se-ri decides to have a day off with Jeong-hyeok, and after going to the cinema, they go for a walk on a bridge. He tells her about a time he took a day off when he saw a woman on a bridge about to jump off. He then reveals that they met on that fateful day as he gives her the recording. She then tells him that today will be one of the best memories she will have in her life. In the evening, Se-ri, Jeong-hyeok, Man-bok and the 4 soldiers spend some time together eating, drinking and watching football. As Man-bok heads outside, he comes face to face with Cho, who threatens to hurt his son if he doesn't comply and join his side. Before going to bed, Eun-dong talks to his captain about all the interesting things he saw while in Seoul. He then mentions the video game he played in an internet cafe, and it's here Jong realizes that he was playing against him. He doesn't say anything though and storms out the room with his ego hurt. In North Korea, the women of the village decide to visit Dan and Sung-joon to seek their help with young Ae's husband, who's in prison. After Sung-joon promises to try, he goes for a walk with Dan and reveals that Cho has escaped to South Korea to bring Se-ri back and that Jeong-hyeok also followed him there. The next day, Se-ri sends Jumyeok on an errand, but first makes sure he is dressed very smart. As he arrives in the restaurant, he is surprised to see his idol, Choi Ji-woo, waiting for him just like she promised him back in North Korea. They sit together and she reveals that Se-ri never usually asks any favors, but she did it because she really likes him. He is completely starstruck with her and brings up a famous line from her drama, Stairway to Heaven, as they spend some time together eating and talking. In the evening, Jumyeok thanks Se-ri for making his dream come true. As they all say goodbye once again, she tells them they deserve all the awards she gave them and that this might not be the last time they say goodbye. We then cut to see that Cho is listening to them and hears what Jeong-hyeok is planning to do. Se-ri's father confronts Se-hyung about what he did with his sister and plans to demote him at the next meeting. Sang-ae comes in the office and shows him pictures of Se-ri and Sung-joon together in North Korea. She tells them that he's the son of the CEO of a company he forcefully took over 20 years ago, and they claim that Se-ri may have plotted with him to steal money from them. The father tells them he will check these claims and will decide what to do after. We then cut to Se-hyung in Cho's car, telling him that he doesn't care whether he kidnaps or kills his sister, while Man-bok calls him to relay that Se-ri has just left. Se-ri is quickly stopped by multiple black vans and sees multiple men coming out with baseball bats while Jeong-hyeok heads to the meeting organized by Mr. Oh. It is, of course, a trap set by Cho, and as he tries to dispose of them, we see a flashback of Man-bok telling Jeong-hyeok about his meeting with Cho, and all of them planning to trick Cho and his men. We then cut back to Se-ri's car as the 4 soldiers come out and quickly get rid of Cho's men. Next, they make their way to help Jeong-hyeok. A fight ensues between all of them, but Cho manages to take Man-bok outside. Se-ri watches as Jeong comes out, and as Cho is about to shoot him, she drives her car in the direction of the bullet and stops it from hitting him. Jeong-hyeok shoots Cho and Man-bok gives the final shot, killing him in the process. Jeong-hyeok quickly rushes over to Se-ri, who has been shot. We then see a montage of their best moments together, and he tells her that he still needs to tell her he loves her. In the epilogue, we see that the 4 soldiers refuse to go home without their captain as they pledge their lives to him. Cutting back to the present, we see them running to Jeong-hyeok holding Se-ri, and, unable to contain their grief, they all burst into tears thinking that she's dead. We pick up where we left off with Se-ri getting shot. After Jeong-hyeok and Man-bok shoot Cho, we see that he has unfortunately managed to run away. In the hospital, the doctor tells Jeong that her condition is very serious as the bullet is in her lung and they have to operate. While he waits, he tells her that for the first time after his brother's death, he's finally happy and he's never loved anyone until she crashes landed in his world. Meanwhile, the 4 soldiers have been waiting outside the hospital and despair that Se-ri hasn't woken up yet. We then see a flashback of the gifts she gave them. Full suits. She tells them she wishes the world would change so that they would be able to talk to each other from time to time. The next day, the police question Jeong-hyeok about the shooting. He asks them if anyone else came to the hospital with a gunshot wound as the shooter also received a bullet. We then see that manager Oh took him to a secret facility to be operated on. In the hospital, Sang-ae grows suspicious of Jeong-hyeok and suggests to the family they have him fired as her bodyguard. Chong-sik relays this to Jeong-hyeok, who leaves the hospital while in the North Korean village. Young Ae's husband finally returns. The women organize a dinner with Myung-eun where Woo-suk accidentally tells her that they think Jeong-hyeok had an affair. Se-ri finally wakes up and sends her brothers and wives away. She quickly calls Jeong-hyeok and he runs to her room and starts crying, asking her why she puts herself in such terrible danger. She tells him he did the same for her but replies that it's different as he is her bodyguard. He then hugs her and tells her he loves her. The 4 soldiers rush in her room but Jeong-hyeok stops them from hugging her for now. He then asks them how they knew she was awake, so Man-bok shows them that he managed to put a bug in the room and they have been listening all along. In North Korea, Dan meets with Sung-joon again. She berates him for calling her and asks what he really thinks. He tells her how amazing she is and that he wants to be a better man around her. This then prompts her to finally kiss him. Back in hospital, Se-ri listens to one of the recordings where her mother finally apologizes for abandoning her all those years ago and never accepting her love. She begs her to come back so she can say thank you for everything she did. Jeong-hyeok walks in the room and after she complains about her scar, starts to show her all of his. The 4 soldiers arrive in the room with the famous fried chicken and eat to celebrate her recovery. Meanwhile, the South Korean authorities are investigating a tunnel they found that is connecting both countries. They've filmed 2 suspects coming out of it over the last few weeks and are determined to find out where they are. In the hospital, Jeong-hyeok dotes on Se-ri and helps her with everything. The 4 soldiers grow a little concerned, though, as he doesn't seem to be aware of anyone else around him. Unfortunately, a paparazzi manages to take a picture of the 2 hugging, which quickly gets shared online. Se-hyung and his bodyguards try to go inside his sister's room but are stopped by Jeong-hyeok, who quickly gets rid of them. Cho emails the military director with proof that Jeong in South Korea. He tells him he'll come back home with Se-ri and destroy Director Ri to enable him to take his position. We then cut to the military director visiting Chung-ryol and showing him pictures of his son in Seoul. He tells him that his best option would be to retire quietly. However, Ri quickly defends himself and tells him it was his idea and part of a plan to help the army economy. In her hospital room, Se-ri has all her family gathered around her and plays a recording of Se-hyung and her sister discussing their previous scheme to get her killed with the help of Cho. Furious, Jung-pyong completely disowns him and mutters that he's not his son anymore. Se-hyung panics and blames his wife for all of it. He tries to protest, but his mum gets up and slaps him. In the North Korean village, Man-bok's wife gets taken away by two men claiming that her husband has been in a car crash, while Sang-ae gets a call and finds out that Jeong-hyeok is from North Korea. This prompts her to go and find the inspector to reveal the truth to him. As Jeong-hyeok heads out to find Cho, we see that he is being followed by the police. He reaches Cho but is unable to shoot him as the police surround the building with sniper rifles all pointing at him. We end the episode with Cho turning around and firing his gun. In the epilogue, Se-ri finds a note and a recording from Jeong-hyeok to use if she is unable to sleep. As she plays it, we hear him play his brother's song as he knows it has brought comfort in her life. We also see a flashback of him bringing a lot of food in her flat to make sure she eats and sleeps properly. In the next scene, we see Sung-joon reaches the roof of the building while being chased. Cheon takes a shotgun and points it at him while we return to Cho receiving instructions to get rid of Jeong-hyeok. It's here that the latter arrives, and as he takes his gun out, they're surrounded by the police aiming sniper rifles at him. As Cho takes his shot, Jeong moves out of the way, which prompts the police to shoot Cho down. Before dying, he tells him he will not be able to go back home as he sent evidence showing what he has been doing with Se-ri. If he goes back, his parents will be executed, and if he stays, he will get arrested and they will face the same fate. The police then storm the building as Jeong-hyeok was contemplating killing himself. Meanwhile, Se-ri is in hospital talking to Man-bok and Kwang-beom about Jeong's whereabouts. While in the North Korean village, Myung's son begs the soldiers to leave her son with her friends. The other women rush to her aid and, thanks to Young Ae, find out that the soldiers are not from state security, which saves their friends and her son. In Seoul, Sang-ah speaks to her husband and reveals that they still have a chance as she knows Se-ri has brought people from North Korea to her. Back in the hospital, security arrive to arrest the four soldiers and Man-bok. They take the latter away while Chi-soo, Ju-myuk and Eun-dong hide. Chi-soo decides to sacrifice himself by creating a diversion as he's the only one without a family. Only, it doesn't work and they manage to get them all, which prompts Se-ri to remove her and go after them, insisting that they take her too. In the National Intelligence Service building, the 5 men are searched and registered, followed by a lie detector test which Pyo thought was a torture machine. He later meets with Eun-dong in the canteen, who tells them he was shown satellite pictures of his hometown and house. Pyo is still suspicious though and thinks they are playing mind games. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok stays calm and silent in the interrogation room while his dad finds out he has been caught in South Korea. At the same time, Cheon tells Sung-joon that they're heading to China. After spending the night in a room, Cheon unties Sung-joon and lets him escape. He later gets help from orphans, and as one of the boys remind him of himself, he decides to give him money as a thank you. After the NIS agents view footage of Jeong-hyeok doing good deeds, they interrogate him about his reasons for being in South Korea. He lies though and tells them he came to convince Se-ri to go back to North Korea, but that his subordinates had nothing to do with it. Chief Kim visits Se-ri in hospital. She reveals the truth about why Jeong-hyeok came and tells him she wants to send him home safely. All the soldiers refuse to testify, so they decide to bring Se-ri in for a face-to-face interview involving Jeong-hyeok. However, he doesn't seem happy as he reveals that he has been using her all along when he found out how important and how rich she is in South Korea. Seeing that she can't convince him, Se-ri leaves but ends up collapsing in the hallway. However, when Jeong-hyeok finds out that she collapsed, he runs after her, but he is too late as she is taken away by her mother. In hospital, we find out that Se-ri has blood poisoning due to her wound and high level of stress. In North Korea, Sung-joon arrives in the village and asks the women for some food. Dan finally manages to call him after trying to reach him all day, and they meet in Jeong's house. He tells her he has to leave now that the Department of Security has found him. He thanks her for everything she did before proceeding to offer up an engagement ring. After Dan leaves Sung at the airport, he gets a call from a mysterious man claiming to have Dan and to meet with him. In the NIS building, Agent Kim finds out that the soldiers have been using Se-ri's credit card but is surprised to see that they only spent money on trivial things like video games and karaoke. Back in the hospital, Se-ri takes a turn for the worst. Jeong-hyeok is allowed to leave as we see him rush to her bedside while Sung-joon scrambles to save Dan. He enters a factory and kills all the guards but unfortunately gets shot in the process. Dan runs toward him crying while Sung-joon thinks to himself that he's sad and happy that Dan will be the one beside him when he's dying. The episode ends with both Sung-joon and Se-ri seemingly dying as we hear the flatline sound of their machine. In the epilogue, the agents talk about their analyses of Jong's gestures towards Se-ri and come to the conclusion that he's in love with her. We pick up where we left off with Sung-joon getting shot while saving Dan. We then see both him and Se-ri struggling to live. Her heart stops and the doctors start performing CPR on her while Dan cries by Sung-joon's side as she was going to give him a chance and wait for him. She finally admits to liking him as he gives his last breath. Dan is inconsolable and begs the paramedics to do something while Se-ri starts breathing again. Meanwhile, the soldiers discuss their detainment. Pyo still think that the agents are scheming something as they told all of them they're allowed to stay if they want to. A week later in the north, Chung Ryol discusses the current situation with the military director. We find out that both countries are trying to make a deal about the 6 soldiers and that the South has agreed to release them back. As both Chung Ryol and the director have something on each other, they agree to cover for one another, but the director insists on being in charge of their repatriation. Back in the hospital, Se-ri's mother reveals that they're about to send Jeong-hyeok back. She is happy that he stopped lying and that he's going to be safe. However, when she finds out that he stayed at her bedside the whole time she suffered without any sleep or food, she asks to be taken to him. On the bus back to the airport, the 4 soldiers find out that Se-ri collapsed but are relieved to learn she woke up. As they reach the border, they all get out of the bus and start walking towards the line. Agent Kim tries to get the North Koreans to wait a little, but they insist on doing the exchange now. Se-ri and her mum arrive just as they cross the line and see them getting arrested. This prompts her to run towards Jeong-hyeok, and as he crosses the line back to her, each side draws their guns. She asks him why he's being arrested and blames herself, but he tells her she was a gift to him and apologizes for his words the previous day. They express their love for one another as Jeong-hyeok gets taken away from her. All 4 soldiers cry too and manage to shout caring words while being taken away. In the north, Jeong-hyeok's mother asks her husband to bring her son back alive, while we see all 6 soldiers being taken in the woods to the military director, who's planning to execute them. Jeong-hyeok insists on having a fair trial, but the soldiers pull out their guns. As they're about to shoot, the soldiers get shot by Chung Ryol and his men. He ends up shooting the director too for trying to commit an execution without giving them a fair trial. Manbok also returns home to his family while we see that Dan is refusing to eat. She tells her mum that she wants to take her revenge and meet with Cheon as she thinks that Se-ri's second brother could be the one who paid the gang responsible for Sung-joon's death. We then cut to Se-hyung and his wife, who are surprised to see Se-ri with their father. Manager Oh and Agent Kim arrive too and reveal that Cheon has sent information regarding their involvement with Cho to Se-ri. This results in them getting arrested as the dad tells them he is cutting them off once and for all. Returning home, Se-ri finds the food and notes Jeong-hyeok left her. She starts crying, then heads to bed listening to his piano recording he left her. She receives a text from him as we cut back to when he was detained and sent texts to be received in future dates. He tells her he still had things to tell her and to go to the bookshelf where he arranged the books to say, "I love you, Se-ri," like she did to him in North Korea. We then see several different texts during the next few days, including telling her to go for a walk while he does the same too. In North Korea, the 4 soldiers reminisce about their time in Seoul and miss things like hot water and the internet, while Dan's mother goes to visit the women of the village and give them beauty products from Se-ri's choice that she made with their faces on them. The women are touched as they realize that Se-ri hasn't forgotten about them and are happy that she is doing well. Both Dan and Jeong-hyeok's mother meet and talk about their children. They both clear the air and apologies to each other while Myung-eun explains that her daughter has someone to love and who loves her back. At the same time, Dan visits Jeong-hyeok and mentions Sung-joon, who she says has gone very far away. As they talk about their times in Switzerland and all the pictures he took, she hands him his old camera, which we see contains pictures of Se-ri on the famous bridge. In Seoul, Se-ri receives another text and a flower pot with instructions on how to grow it. She follows them as she sees it grow while he does the same on his side. As she carries on receiving texts during the year, Se-ri seems happier and treats her staff to meals out. Finally, She receives one last one on her birthday where he asks her if her plant has bloomed, explaining that they are Edelweiss. He goes on to say they should meet in the country they grow but isn't able to tell her when. In the North Korean village, all 4 women have dressed up nicely as they head to have dinner with the 5 soldiers. Jeong-hyeok tells them to be nice to the next captain, as he has been chosen to be a pianist in the National Symphony Orchestra. We then see that Pyo is going to be the new captain and looks very proud of himself. The women are sad to see him go, but he promises that they will see each other again. In Seoul, Se-ri speaks to her brother about making the right decision to have hired a professional manager to look after the company. She then suggests creating a foundation to support disadvantaged children. 1 year later, Se-ri walks around the lake in Eiseltwald again and remembers Jeong-hyeok playing the piano. Back in Seoul, she speaks to her mum about her plan, which is to organize yearly musical performances for the musical genius she sponsors and posting articles about it in the hope that Jeong will see them. She vows to return there every year until he finds her again. We then see her paragliding one day in Switzerland through the mountains and lands awkwardly with her parachute over her head. As she complains about her landing and removes the parachute from her head, she is surprised to see Jeong-hyeok looking at her. She runs to him and they embrace before he tells her he got on the wrong train, but that it brought him to his destination where he has been wanting to be day and night. In the epilogue, Myung-eun and her brother speak to the fortune teller about Dan. She explains that there is only one man for her, but as he is not around, she tells them that she will become successful and won't need a man as we see her getting ready for her musical performance in Russia. In the village, we find out that Man Bok and his family are moving to the capital as he got a job in a film studio recording sounds. The 4 soldiers head to the market and try finding beauty products. The woman gives them some which turns out to be from Se-ri's line. They talk about Jeong-hyeok leaving to find Se-ri, while we see her preparing for 2 weeks off. She arrives in Switzerland again for the musical performance and tells the hotel owner that the 2 weeks she spent here are the best of her years. In the evening, Jeong-hyeok arrives too and sits next to her while listening to someone play the piano. The next day, they wake up in a house together overlooking the lake and meet for a picnic, happy to be together as our film ends.